In this lesson, we'll look at one possible solution for the combining exercise. Alright, so in the last lesson we had taken a look at this reference image, and here you can see that we have two different primitives that are going to be used. The first one is going to be a box that is very cubed shaped, so we know that that box is going to have the same values for the length, width, and height. And then we also have our cylinder here, and it looks like the cylinder starts out at one size and then it has a break in the middle, and where we create this groove. We could use extrude to create that groove there once we have those segments in place. And it looks like the outer edge is scaled outward, and then we also have an inset with an extrusion on the end. Now we know how to connect objects together, so what we'll have to do is attach them and then simply bridge those polygons together. So we've already taken a look at how we can get that solution. It's just a matter of creating the detail. So let's get started with that. So inside of 3ds Max, I'm going to create my box just to get started here. So I'm going to make sure that this is a cube, and I'm going to type in my length, width, and height at 40. Okay. And at this point, I know that it's going to be connecting to a cylinder, so I'm going to add some segments here just to get started. So I don't need them on the particular length, but I will need some along this way here. So let's go ahead and bump up to 4. And right here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices, and I'm going to connect that to a cylinder that has 8 sides as well. And so I'm going to go into cylinder. And you know what, I may need to, well, we'll go ahead and we'll leave it just the way it is for right now. Let's go ahead and go to cylinder, and let's create a new cylinder. And this one's going to be 8 sides. And I'm going to set up its radius to 6 to get us started. And then I'm also going to set it to 30. And this is just to get us started. We'll talk about how to get the rest of it in a moment. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees and then put it in position. So I'm going to get it lined up the best that I can. I'm going to hit F4 so I can see the segments in both of these objects. And while I'm here, I'm just going to change the color and then also apply that material just so it's easier to see. And bump that right up against there. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm trying to get this centered up, at least in this direction here. So pull that down, and that segment's matching up with this segment, so everything is looking perfect. And now we're ready to go. So let me move this away just a little bit just to get us started here. So let's start on this object. Let's go ahead and apply a turbo smooth to this, and before we do that, let's convert it to editable poly and apply turbo smooth and just kind of see what we have at this point. So looking at this, if I turn on isoline display and then smooth that a little bit more, okay, we're doing okay. But if we take a look at our reference image, we have very sharp edges on all sides except for this corner right here. So we need to figure out a way to sharpen this up without getting rid of that curve there, because that could be very important in the concept image. So looking at 3ds Max, let's go ahead and go to edge mode, and we're going to use Swift Loop. And so if I want to create a hard edge on this side, create one there, and also right here. I still have my curve right there, so I do not want to cut across it because that will sharpen that up. And then I want to cut across the back side here because that's going to be sharp as well. Now the bottom in the reference image is sharp, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut across the bottom just to make sure that that's sharpened up. And now, if we take a look at our model, the basic shape is there. Everything looks very, very sharp except for that one corner. So now we're good. We can go ahead and leave that just the way it is, and we'll go ahead and we'll move on. So looking at this, we do have a bit of a shape right here in the middle, okay, on our reference image. We have this kind of square that's extruded out or even beveled out of there, and we need to figure out how to create that. So to get started with this, let's go to edge mode, and I'm going to select all of these edges right here in the middle. So select that ring, and I'm going to use connect, and it's set to 1. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 2, so that way we have that square started in there. Now, it's not quite as wide as it should be inside of the reference image. It's a little bit wider than that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinch, I'm going to pull that up, and I'm going to make sure that that is pretty close to being square. So let's set that to about 50 and then hit OK. Let's go into polygon mode and select those two polygons right there, and I'm going to bevel those up. I'm going to take my height down. I don't have to bevel it quite that much. And then my inset at -1 is pretty good, but you'll notice that it's really not all that sharp. So let's take a look at how we can sharpen this up. So going into Edit, Swift Loop, let's create a loop around the top and then also around the bottom, but it's still really round. So I need to create a cut right across here and then here. We can go ahead and make a cut right here, but before we do that, we need to make sure that we get this connected right here, because that could pose some issues. So we're not going to cut across that. So right click to reduce that, or to remove that, and then it looks like that's not quite as square as what's in the reference image. So let's go to vertex mode and select all of those vertices right there in the middle. Let's make sure we have all of those, and then we're going to scale those in to make sure that that is a little more square, and that looks great. So there we've created that portion of the model, and now we're ready to create the handle. So before we get started, let's go ahead and connect those together. So I'm going to take this object, I'm going to go ahead and remove the turbo smooth for right now. So just delete that. All of our segments are there, and they'll be there whenever we create our turbo smooth again. So let's attach this object to our cylinder, and then remove that attach. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to polygon mode and select the polygons that need to be attached to one another. So I'm going to select all of those and delete. Alright, so now that I have that, I'm going to take this part, I'm going to move that out a little bit more. And then let's go to border mode, select the borders that are there, and hit bridge. Now, this transition may be pretty smooth, but I'm going to add one more segment in there just to make sure that it's very smooth. So I'm going to select that loop by going to edge mode and scale that down a little bit, so it's going to be really smooth in the middle there. So let's create the handle. Okay, so first off, let's go ahead and extrude this out, and I'm just going to extrude it out a little bit because I need to create that groove that's in the handle. So I'm going to take that to 2 and hit OK. And it looks like that might not be long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and go to vertex mode and select all of those vertices on the end and just pull that out a little bit longer. So that looks good. And now let's go ahead and grab this polygon and we'll extrude that out. And actually, let's do bevel. Let's extrude that out, and then we're going to bevel it in a positive direction. So let's say 1, and then extrude height out. And let's do 40 on that. Take our height up a little bit more to what it looks like it should be in our reference image. It looks like 6 is a pretty good value. And then we'll hit OK. We're going to inset that to create that polygon that we need on the end. So let's go to 3. And let's try that one more time. Let's type in 3. There we go. And then we're going to bevel. So we're going to take our amount down. Let's take our amount down to 6. And then our bevel amount down to 2, -2. And hit OK. So now that we have our shapes there, it looks like we may have beveled a little bit too much, so let's scale that back up a little bit. And there we go. So now we're ready to apply our turbo smooth again. And now all we have to do is smooth out the handle itself. So to get started with this, let's go into edge mode and use Swift Loop. So, one thing that we forgot was the groove right here. That's right at this point. We need to extrude that, and we're going to extrude that inward. So we're going to do, I believe, -2 by local normal. And we're going to extrude that in. And let's just do -1 on that, and I'm going to hit OK. And then I need to create 2 segments on the outside to hold that edge. So edit Swift Loop. Here we go. So it's holding that edge now, and you'll notice that it's really smooth on the inside here. So what I can do is I can inset that one more time. Let's take our inset amount down to something like 0.2 or maybe even 0.1 and hit OK. And notice how that really hardens up the inside there. Okay, so created something really, really smooth there. And a nice transition here, and I feel like that is that transition there is just a little too smooth. So I'm actually going to push that toward the middle, toward the base of this a little bit more. And that should harden that up. Okay, that's looking good. And then finally the end. And Swift Loop, and let's make sure that we get the end of our handle on both sides. Down on the end here. And there we go. So we've created our shape here. Now, one thing that does concern me really quickly is that the handle right here is not quite thick enough. So again, I'm just showing you this to pay attention to the details, because again, modeling this way, it's important because you need to make sure that you're matching it as close as possible. I'm going to go ahead and try to get this as much as possible here. I'm going to grow that. And just trying to scale this out a little bit more. Get rid of these edges, or these polygons here. I just want to scale out just this part of the handle. Make that a little bit thicker. And I think that's going to match our reference image. Yeah, and that looks good. Okay, so we've recreated that image there. Okay, that reference image. So that's just one possible solution. Again, you could come in and you don't necessarily have to even use a cylinder. You could have used just those polygons and kind of shaped those into a cylinder and then extruded it out. That's totally fine. That's just another solution. So now that we've gone through the solution for this, and you can compare yours end result with my end result and get some ideas on a different workflow if yours didn't go quite as fast. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move into our next lesson where we're going to talk about how to use splines for modeling.